I've been sitting here for, I don't even know, 20 minutes, maybe 40. The monitors went to sleep before I did. That's the thing nobody tells you about a home office at 11:30 at night. It doesn't judge you. It just goes dark and waits. And you sit there staring at two black rectangles, and your own face is staring back at you like some kind of low-budget ghost story. Except the ghost isn't dead, he's just not doing anything. I had YouTube open earlier, not for anything. I wasn't researching. I wasn't learning a new skill. I was 4 tabs deep into a playlist someone made called Songs That Defined 1997, and I was watching a Winamp visualizer someone screen recorded 20 years ago, and I felt more at home in that than I've felt in this house in months, maybe longer. The surge protector on the floor keeps blinking, this little blue pulse, like the room itself has a heartbeat, and I'm just the guy who forgot to leave. Here's the status report nobody asked for. I have a commute that takes 47 minutes on a good day. I have a mortgage that renews in 18 months. I have a wife downstairs who stopped asking me what I'm doing up here about 2 years ago. And I have this museum. This perfectly curated archive of a decade I keep returning to like it owes me something. The 90s. Specifically, 96 to 2001. That's my window. That's the file I keep opening. And I've been telling myself it's taste. I've been telling myself the world genuinely peaked somewhere around the time I was burning mixed CDs in a dorm room with a 2x speed drive, and everything since then has just been a long, slow firmware downgrade. The music was better. The movies were better. People actually talked. Nobody was performing. And all of that might even be partially true. I'm not here to argue about whether Radiohead was better than whatever's charting right now, because obviously it was. But that's not why I'm here at midnight staring at my own reflection in a dead monitor with a playlist from 1998 running in a background tab. That's not taste. That's not preference. That's a man who figured out that if he never fully arrives in the present, he never has to find out what he's become in it. I keep the past on rotation because in the past, I hadn't failed yet. In the past, I was still the version of myself that had options. And I don't go back to visit him. I go back to hide inside him, like a save file from before the corruption. The contempt is the part I'm not proud of. The way I scroll past something new and feel this quiet, automatic dismissal. Like the entire present tense is beneath me. Lisa will mention a show. I'll half listen and decide it's not worth my bandwidth before she finishes the sentence. Michael will play something from his phone at dinner, some track that sounds like it was made in a washing machine, and I'll do this little nod, this polite nothing, and then later I'll come up here and put on the Smashing Pumpkins like I'm restoring the natural order. The lie is elegant, I'll give it that. The lie says, I'm not stuck, I just have standards. I've seen better, I lived through better, and now I'm surrounded by people who don't know what they're missing because they never had it, and that's their problem, not mine. The lie says I'm the one who remembers, the keeper of the real thing. Last Tuesday, 47-minute commute, like I said. Traffic on the 405 was this rolling purgatory of brake lights, and I had the whole drive mapped out. Not a podcast, not the news. The same playlist I've been rotating for probably 6 years. Third Eye Blind, Semisonic, that fastball song, the one about the couple who just drives and never comes back. I know every single word, every transition. I know the exact moment the bridge hits on Semi-Charmed Life, and I know the exact stretch of freeway where it lines up with the overpass near the Costco exit. I've synchronized my nostalgia with my commute like it's a project plan. And for those 47 minutes, I'm not 48. I'm not managing a backlog of JIRA tickets for a product I don't believe in. I'm not the guy whose daughter studies with her door closed every single night and whose son sits across the dinner table looking at him like he's a router that lost its connection. For those 47 minutes, I'm the version of me that still had a trajectory. And the lie whispers, this is just how a man with good taste survives a mediocre era. Saturday morning. Lisa took Emma to get her car inspected. Michael was still asleep at noon. I had the house to myself, which used to feel like freedom and now feels like a system running with no active users. I sat down at this desk, opened YouTube, and typed in 90s movie trailers like I was filing a help ticket to my own past. 2 hours. I watched trailers for movies I've seen 9 times. The Matrix, Fight Club, Good Will Hunting. Not because I wanted to watch them again, because I wanted to feel the way I felt when I didn't know how they ended yet, when everything was still a possibility, not a result. I wanted to sit inside the uncertainty of being 23 and not knowing what my life would become, because that uncertainty, that was the last time I felt genuinely alive. And I've repackaged that as cultural criticism, as having standards, as being the last honest man in a shallow century. The cost isn't dramatic. That's what makes it so efficient. Nobody stages an intervention because a man listens to old music in his car. Nobody sends you to a specialist because you spend your weekends watching VHS-era footage on YouTube. It's not a crisis. It's a quiet, methodical disappearing act. And the people in your house don't even notice the moment you stop being present because you did it so gradually that the absence just became part of the architecture. I can't remember the last time I asked Lisa a question I didn't already know the answer to. Not about schedules, not about logistics. An actual question. Something I was genuinely curious about. Something that might have surprised me. I've turned my own marriage into a recurring meeting with no agenda. We sync calendars, we coordinate pickups, we divide the week into deliverables, and then we go to separate rooms and stare at separate screens and call it functioning. Emma, and this is the one that sits in my head like a corrupted file I can't delete. Emma came into this office 3 weeks ago. She stood in the doorway. She had her textbook in one hand and she just stood there, like she was waiting for a prompt. And I looked up from whatever I was watching, probably some retrospective on late 90s web design, because apparently that's who I am now, and I said, "What's up?" Not even a question, a dismissal shaped like a greeting. She said, "Nothing, never mind." And she left. And I went back to the screen. I went back to 1999, because 1999 didn't need anything from me. 1999 didn't stand in the doorway looking like it was about to say something important and then decide I wasn't safe enough to say it to. That's the cost. You don't lose your family in one catastrophic crash. You lose them in 1,000 micro disconnections that all feel like nothing in the moment. You stand in the kitchen running a firmware update on the smart fridge or recalibrating the lighting zone, not because it needs fixing right now, but because looking busy with hardware implies you are contributing to the evening without actually having to participate in it. Being available. Being the current version of yourself instead of the archived one. I open the fridge. I stand there looking at nothing. I close it. I come back up here. I rearrange files on a desktop that doesn't need rearranging. I check an email I already read. I am keeping myself in a permanent state of low-grade task completion so I never have to stop and just be here, in this house, in this year, with these people who are slowly learning to live without me while I'm still in the building. So you'd think, knowing all of this, laying it out like a post-mortem on a failed deployment, you'd think I'd close the tabs, update the playlist, walk downstairs and sit on the couch next to my wife and ask her about her day like a human being who still lives in linear time. But here's the architecture of the trap. The past is a closed system. It's fully debugged. Every variable is known. I already lived it, which means I already survived it, which means it can't hurt me. The present? The present is open source chaos. The present is my son looking at me like he's already grieving someone who hasn't died yet. The present is my daughter performing perfection at a level that should terrify me if I were paying close enough attention. The present is a marriage that runs on logistics because somewhere around 2016 we stopped updating the emotional firmware and just left it on the last stable version. The past doesn't ask me to be vulnerable, doesn't ask me to be new, doesn't ask me to admit that I'm 48 and I don't know how to tell my wife I'm lonely in a house with 4 people in it. The 90s just play. They buffer for a second, they load, and then I'm somewhere safe. And that safety is the most dangerous thing in my life, because every time I go back, I come back a little less, a little more committed to the museum, a little more convinced that the real me is in the archive, and the guy sitting in this office chair is just the runtime error. I tried, I'll say that for the record. 3 months ago, Michael was playing some track in the kitchen. I don't even know the artist. And instead of doing the polite nothing, I stopped and asked him what it was. And he looked at me like I'd just spoken in a dead language. This flicker of confusion, then this careful, guarded answer, like he was diffusing something. It's just a thing I found. That's it. Just a thing I found. And the distance in that sentence, the way he instinctively protected this small piece of his world from my judgment. I understood in that moment that I hadn't just checked out. I had taught everyone in this house that my absence was the default setting. They'd adapted. They'd optimized around the gap. And now the gap was load-bearing. You can't just remove it without the whole structure noticing. So I came back upstairs, opened the playlist, The Verve, Bittersweet Symphony, that same string loop over and over, like a system that knows it's stuck but keeps executing anyway because nobody wrote the exit condition. And I let it run. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to delete the playlist. I'm not going to pretend I found some clean reboot sequence that fixes this. There isn't one. But there's something I keep circling back to, and it's this. The version of me I keep visiting in 1998? He wasn't happy. He was uncertain. He was unfinished. He had no idea what was coming. And that's what I actually miss. Not the music, not the era, not the culture. I miss not knowing. I miss the gap between who I was and who I might become, because that gap was the only place where I ever felt like I was moving. And the brutal, honest-to-God truth is, that gap still exists, right now. I just sealed it off because the last time I was unfinished I was 23, and the stakes felt theoretical. Now I'm 48, and being unfinished means admitting that the life I built might not be the life I wanted. And that's not a nostalgic ache. That's a real, present-tense problem that no amount of Radiohead is going to debug for me. The shift isn't a fix. The shift is just looking at the door Emma stood in 3 weeks ago and understanding that the present tense is not a waiting room. It's the only room. And every hour I spend in the archive is an hour someone in this house needed me to be here. Not the 1998 version. Not the guy with potential and a mix CD. Here. The 48-year-old with no answers who's terrified of being ordinary and has no idea how to say that out loud. That's who they actually need. Not because he's impressive, because he's real. Because he's the only version that can actually sit down at that table and stay. The surge protector keeps blinking. That little blue pulse. On, off, like the room is breathing and I'm just sitting inside it, taking up space. The house is so quiet I can hear the refrigerator cycling downstairs. I can hear the nothing. It's almost 1 in the morning. Lisa's been asleep for hours. Michael's door has been shut since 10. Emma's light was off when I checked, but I didn't check. I assumed. I've been assuming for years. I reach forward and tap the space bar. The monitors wake up. 2 screens of cold white light, and there it is. The playlist, right where I left it. Paused on a track I've heard 400 times, cursor blinking like it's waiting for permission. I look at it. I look at my face reflected over it, transparent, barely there, like a watermark on someone else's document. I close the laptop lid instead, just the monitors glowing. My hand stays on the lid for a second like I'm keeping something sealed. The house hums, and I sit here in the only year that actually exists, not sure if I just did something brave or if I'll open it again in 5 minutes. Probably 5 minutes.